Okay, hi everyone, good morning. I'm coming to you on a new computer here, trying this live out, so bear with me if it's a little slow. But yeah, good morning everybody. So I'm talking today about how to set clear boundaries, super solid clear boundaries, so you never have to experience a toxic relationship again. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It is absolutely possible. So before I go into this though, I want to introduce myself in case you're new to this page. My name is Lindsay O'Brien and I am a coach and I help women heal from toxic relationships so they can feel free, happy, and empowered to reclaim their lives. Okay, so I'm really excited to do this live today, how to set clear boundaries. So what I'm going to do here first is I actually have a little presentation for you guys. I'm going to share my screen here with you. Okay. All right, so let's start. How to set clear boundaries so you never have to experience a toxic relationship again. So boundaries are the key to avoiding toxic relationships, right? So one of the main reasons we may have entered a toxic relationship is because we had poor or unhealthy boundaries. So if you recognize yourself in this, please don't beat yourself up for this. This is usually because you were modeled poor boundaries in your childhood. So it's not your fault, but this is something that can be shifted. And I'm going to talk about how to do this later. It's a skill, it's something you can learn. So boundaries are the way you avoid these relationships. So there's different steps we need to take here. The first step is to get clear on what your boundaries and your limits are. So you may not actually know what your limits are. If you've been in a toxic relationship, you've probably been used to your boundaries or just your feelings and emotions being overstepped, being overlooked. So, at this point, you may not even know what your limits are, what your boundaries are. So the first step here is to get clear on what they are. Take time to sit with yourself, to figure out, okay, what am I going to tolerate in a relationship? What am I going to accept? What am I okay with? And what am I not okay with? So you can even make a list. I highly recommend this. So it's in black and white. It's on paper. You can see it and you can refer back to it when you're in your relationships. Some of your boundaries could be, I will not tolerate cheating, or I will not accept name calling. If you work with me in my program, I actually give you a list of red flags to look out for. And you could make these your limits. You could say, these are the things that I absolutely will not tolerate in a relationship. Now, you can do this ahead of time, and I highly recommend it, but you also may need to do this in the moment. Like, you can think ahead of time and make a list of all the things that you will not tolerate, but something may come up in real life while you're dealing with people. And so what I recommend then is to get in touch with how you feel. This is really important. Pay attention to your emotions. If something is hurting you, something is making you upset, something is not okay with you, get in touch with that, okay? Sit with yourself and say, what is not okay here? What do I need to have happen instead? So this requires a lot of time by yourself because, sometimes when you're in situations with people, it can get very distracting. You can be influenced by other people's, thoughts, opinions, feelings. So take that time to sit with yourself, by yourself, and get clear on what is okay for you and what is not. Okay. So the next step is to give yourself permission to have boundaries. I mean, I put this here because, it may seem obvious, but it's not. It's not. Like I said earlier, if you were modeled poor boundaries or unhealthy boundaries, this is a big step, giving yourself permission to have boundaries. So what you can do here is remind yourself that boundaries are normal and healthy in relationships. You need them to have a good relationship. The example I give is how we are in society. We as a society have decided that we have certain limits. We call them laws, right? We know that to have a functioning, healthy society, and we can maybe argue that society is not healthy, but that's that's a whole other topic. But we as people have said we are not going to tolerate certain things. Murder, not okay. Stealing, not okay. And we understand this as people, that we need to have limits in order for us to be a semi-healthy society. So it's the same thing with relationships. There needs to be limits in order for this to be a healthy relationship, okay? So I did a video on this a while ago. A healthy partner actually wants you to have your own boundaries and limits because they have theirs and they want theirs to be respected. So they want to know what yours are and they want to respect them and do what they can to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable in the relationship. So, if you've spent a lifetime in toxic relationships, this may not be obvious to you, but you need and want to have these boundaries. This is what is required to have a relationship, a healthy relationship. So it's perfectly acceptable to have boundaries here. Okay, so the next step in having really clear boundaries is to practice setting them. So when you're coming from a place where you didn't have very strong boundaries, starting to slowly have boundaries can be a little bit scary, can seem kind of daunting. So I don't recommend someone who's trying to go from having no boundaries to jumping immediately into massive boundary setting, unless it's absolutely necessary. In some cases, you need to put some strong boundaries up right away. But that can sometimes be emotionally overwhelming and really difficult. So what I tell people is to practice setting the boundaries. Start with something small that's relatively easy for you. And this could be like declining a party invitation that a friend invited you to and that you don't want to go to or you don't feel well. Start with something little. And then, that might bring up some discomfort at first, but you work through that, and hopefully you have a support system that can help you stay strong in that boundary setting. And then you work up to the bigger things, like setting a limit with a partner or someone that you're dating. Setting boundaries is a skill. It is literally no more than a skill that you just need to practice. And the more you practice it, the easier it will get, so that by the time you get to the big things, no big deal, right? Okay. So the next step here is to be assertive, not aggressive in your boundary setting. So, sometimes in toxic relationships, when we've had no boundaries, there can be a tendency to swing to the other side of having extreme boundaries and being very aggressive with them. And so that's not the direction we want to go. We want to come to the balance, to the middle here, where you're being strong, clear, and assertive, but you're not being aggressive. Because to other people, aggression feels really harsh and like a punishment. And that's not necessary. Some people say, when I set boundaries, I feel mean. Well, first of all, boundaries are not mean. But if you are saying them in an aggressive way, it could come across as mean, okay? So again, it's not necessary. Assertive is clear, direct, and kind. So I want to make this clear. You can be kind and have boundaries. I'm sure many of you here are kind people. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And so that's why when we set limits, we use I statements, right? And we say them in a calm voice. We don't need to be accusatory. We don't need to be angry. The ideal limit boundary setting statement is a calm I statement. Okay. So you want to express how something made you feel and then what you need from the person. So I gave you an example here. This would look like, I felt sad when you didn't call me yesterday. What I need is for you to call me when you say you will. So there's nothing mean about this statement here. It's not aggressive. It's just very clear. This is how I was affected by your behavior. This is what I need for you to do. Okay. So, aggressive would be, oh, you're such an asshole for not calling me. Like we don't need to go there. That's not very helpful. That's verging into unhealthy behavior. Okay. So again, focus on how something made you feel. Use the I statements. I feel blank when this happened. Here's what I need for you to do. Could you do this instead? Because with boundary setting, like, we can tend to think that something is obvious to someone, like they should be able to read our minds. Like, oh, well, it's obvious to me that you should be calling me, right? But it's not always obvious to people. Everyone has different experiences and different expectations in relationships. So what may be obvious to you probably isn't obvious to someone else. So you have to communicate it. You have to say, this is what I need. This is what would make me feel comfortable. This is what will make me feel better. Okay? So communicate it in a kind, clear way. All right, guys. And the next step here to have super clear boundaries is to be willing to enforce consequences. This is huge. A lot of us can forget that with boundaries, there have to be consequences, because otherwise your boundaries mean nothing. You can say all day long that you need this, 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 but if you are unwilling to enforce some consequences when someone can't give you that, you may as well not have any boundaries, right? So this could look like, in the previous example, I was hurt when you didn't call me yesterday. I need you to call me when you say you do, when you say you're going to. And if this person cannot do that for you, then you need to be willing to potentially walk away from the relationship. This is the key here. A lot of us have ended up in these toxic relationships because we weren't willing to enforce the consequences with people. We accepted excuses. We stayed and just hoped they would change, and hoped that us just saying that we were hurt by something would make them change. That's how we get stuck. So this is how you avoid these toxic relationships, is you set the boundaries, you set the limits, and then you sit back and watch. You watch and wait. You see what this person does. Can they meet my needs, or can they not? Can they respect my limits, or can they not? And if they can't, then you walk away, right? So this is kind of the magic formula here for avoiding toxic relationships. If someone cannot respect your limits or your boundaries, that is a red flag, okay? So you have to be willing to walk away to get to the people who would love to respect your boundaries, who are happy to respect your limits and show up in the way that you need them to show up, okay? All right, guys, I hope this has been helpful so far. So if you yourself are struggling with boundaries, enforcing consequences, or getting clarity on what to say in these different situations, apply for my one-on-one coaching program. I have an amazing program that teaches you exactly how to set these boundaries with people and I even have scripts for like exactly what you can say, so you can avoid these toxic relationships. I actually worked with someone recently who was back out there in the dating world, struggling with boundaries. We walked her through it. Basically, we helped her dodge a bullet with someone. And then shortly after, she met an amazing guy and she's in a great relationship and very happy. So that's the power of having boundaries. These boundaries are literally life-changing, okay? It has been for me, it has been for many of the women I've worked with. So feel free to send me a message and we can get you guys going on this here. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen here. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. If you guys have some more questions about boundaries, send them in the comments or send me a message. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon. Oh, and let me know if you like this presentation style. I'm trying it out. It's really fun for me to do. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.